Okay, so before I put my Parma mask on, I have washed my body, but since I've been touching it, I've been leaving a lot of greasy fingerprints. Believe it or not, there's a lot of grease on your fingers, even though they appear dry, feel dry, or whatever. You will leave a fingerprint or two every time you touch anything. So what I'll do is I'll take my rubbing alcohol, dab some on a cloth, and I will go over the area that I'm about to mask, especially taking good note of the area that I'm actually going to paint once the Parma mask is pulled off in those particular spots, just to make sure that I get all the oils and stuff from my fingers everywhere that I've been touching, just to make sure I get a good clean surface for my paint to stick to. Once I do that, just set that aside. Then I'll take my Parma mask, shake it up real good, grab my paintbrush, and start to apply the mask. What I'll do is I'll start with getting the mask out of the lid, and I'll start applying it in one direction, making sure that I get all the little cracks all up against all the paint masking. Okay, now that I've got my first coat on, sometimes you get little clumps and stuff that form in the jar. You just want to make sure all your clumps and stuff aren't where you're going to be cutting this design out. Like I said, I like to go in one direction, just put a real thin light coat. Take your brush, it will dissolve in water. Got me a nice cup of warm water right here. Clean the little brush off, make sure I get all the latex out of it. Cleans up pretty easily. Normally I do it at the sink, but I don't want to have to be getting up. I mean, I'm getting up enough just editing the film. Of course, I'm not going to be doing this all in one day. It's going to be shot in little sequences. And I'll dry my brush off, just get it a little dry. It'll be dry by the time I get through drying my Parma mask. As you can see, it's not very opaque. Actually, it is kind of opaque when it's wet. Once it dries, it'll dry nice and clear. We're going to use a standard hair dryer, and we'll dry it out a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, it dries. That was about 2-3 minutes. Dries pretty well. This puts out a lot of heat, believe it or not, and it will distort your body. I have a little trigger here. Most hair dryers have some kind of form of trigger to cut off the heat. So I actually actuate it. I give it a little heat and then hit the button, make it blow cold air, little heat, cold air, little heat, cold air, back and forth, back and forth. Just because I don't want to get my body shell too hot or distort it in any way. So we have one coat on there. Now we're going to put another coat on. This time I'm going to go in a side-to-side motion just to make sure that everything gets covered. I'm going to shake my can up real good again. And once again, I'll start with the paint that's in the top of the lid that gets stuck there. And this time we'll go on the side. Okay, so now we got the second coat on. Every time you're painting these on, getting this Permamask on, whenever you go over a ledge or go down a ledge, you'll leave a buildup in the crevices. Sometimes you have to brush up and down just to clear that buildup off. Other than that, it will take a heck of a lot longer to dry when it's thick like that. If you'll notice, after I get through drying this portion, it won't dry nearly as fast. And also it will, in here where the body reams, where it's been reamed out for the body post, you'll notice the buildup there. It's still blue. It doesn't dry as often. Once I let this dry overnight, of course, the entire thing will be clear. Alright, rinse our brush off. Get all the latex out of it. Replace our lid. And commence to drying it one more time. Okay guys, here we are back. Had a little bit of a foobar. The camera memory ran out while I was doing my masking. When I was painting my masking on, what you got to see was me putting on one coat, drying it, putting on the second coat, and almost into completely drying it, my memory went out and I was unaware of it. So here I am, putting more mask on, talking to a camera that's not even on. It was quite fun, I tell you. It was a little frustrating when I found out that I did it. But regardless of the fact it happened, what you didn't get to see was that I put a third coat on and I let it dry overnight. I didn't attempt to speed dry it with the dryer or anything. I just left it on, let it dry overnight. It dried pretty clear. As you can see, I've got 3 coats on it. It's kind of not so translucent as super clear. It has a little tinge to it. The spots where I had told you that it builds up right in here, I hope you can see that, didn't turn solid clear because of the buildup that was there. I did explain that these here would go clear, the little buildups here, and they did for the most part. So I got that done. It dried overnight. It's nice and clear, good for me to work with. If you've noticed, my fingers have changed colors. I have some nice little paint on them. What I did is, like I had previously stated in the video before this one, where I showed my other 2 trucks that I painted before doing this tutorial, I told you I like to experiment with my paints, and trust me guys, it's a real good idea. Experiment with your paints before you start painting your car, so you know what it's going to look like exactly before you paint your car and realize that that wasn't the color I liked, and that didn't come out the way I wanted it to, and that's what happened to me, and I ended up having to strip off a lot of paint because I didn't experiment and didn't know how these colors laid out, things like that. I noted earlier that you needed to have some magic markers. Some people, instead of using these stencil type things that I use, they draw a design on the back side of it. You can draw a design, whatever you want to make. Doesn't matter. Anything you want to do, whether it be a flag or anything like that. The good thing about that is of course you can remove it with alcohol. If you make a mistake, you can easily remove it with alcohol. It does come off. So much for the word permanent marker. As you can see, it all came off nice and clear, nothing there. Alcohol, rubbing alcohol, great thing to use. It comes in real handy. So like I said, I experimented with some colors. I always do that. Make sure you know what's coming out on your paint.